Okay. Nemonte Nkimo wrote a letter, and that appeared in the Guardian newspaper today. And the title of the letter is, "This is my message to the Western world. Your civilization is killing life on Earth." Now, Nemonte Nkimo is co-founder of the indigenous-led nonprofit organization, Sabo Alliance, the first female president of the Waorani organization of Pastaza province, and one of Time's 100 most influential people in the world. So she begins by addressing the presidents of the 9 Amazonian countries. So she says, "Dear presidents of the 9 Amazonian countries and to all world leaders that share responsibility for the plundering of our rainforest. My name is Nemonte Nkimo. I'm a Waorani woman, a mother and a leader of my people. The Amazon rainforest is my home. I'm writing you this letter because the fires are raging still, because the corporations are spilling oil in our rivers, because the miners are stealing gold as they have been for 500 years and leaving behind open pits and toxins, because the land grabbers are cutting down primary forest so that the cattle can graze, plantations can be grown, and the white man can eat, because our elders are dying from coronavirus while you're planning your next moves to cut up our lands to stimulate an economy that has never benefited us. Because as indigenous peoples, we are fighting to protect what we love, our way of life, our rivers, the animals, our forests, life on Earth, and it's time that you listen to us." In each of our many hundreds of different languages across the Amazon, we have a word for you, the outsider, the stranger. In my language, Wotededo, the word is Kowori, and it doesn't need to be a bad word, but you have made it so. For us, the word has come to mean, and in a terrible way our society has come to represent, the white man that knows too little for the power that he wields and the damage that he causes. You are probably not used to an indigenous woman calling you ignorant, and less so on a platform such as this. But for indigenous peoples, it is clear. The less you know about something, the less value it has to you, and the easier it is to destroy. And by easy, I mean guiltlessly, remorselessly, foolishly, even righteously. And this is exactly what you are doing to us as indigenous peoples, to our rainforest territories, and ultimately to our planet's climate. It took us thousands of years to get to know the Amazon rainforest, to understand her ways, her secrets, to learn how to survive and thrive with her. And for my people, the Waorani, we have only known you for 70 years. We were contacted in the 1950s by American evangelical missionaries. But we are fast learners, and you are not as complex as the rainforest. When you say that the oil companies have marvelous new technologies that can sip the oil from beneath our lands like hummingbirds sip nectar from a flower, we know that you're lying, because we live downriver from the spills. When you say that the Amazon is not burning, we do not need satellite images to prove you wrong. We are choking on the smoke of the fruit orchards that our ancestors planted centuries ago. When you say that you're urgently looking for climate solutions, yet continue to build a world economy based on extraction and pollution, we know that you're lying, because we are the closest to the land and the first to hear her cries. I never had the chance to go to university and become a doctor or a lawyer or a politician or a scientist. My elders are my teachers. The forest is my teacher. And I have learned enough. And I speak shoulder to shoulder with my indigenous brothers and sisters across the world. I've learned enough to know that you have lost your way and that you are in trouble, though you don't fully understand it yet, and that your trouble is a threat to every form of life on Earth. You forced your civilization upon us, and now look where we are. Global pandemic, climate crisis, species extinction, and driving it all, widespread spiritual poverty. In all these years of taking from our lands, you have not had the courage or the curiosity or the respect to get to know us, to understand how we see and think and feel and what we know about life on this earth. I won't be able to teach you in this letter either, but what I can say is that it has to do with thousands and thousands of years of love for this forest, for this place. Love in the deepest sense as reverence. This forest has taught us how to walk lightly, and because we have listened, learned, and defended her, she has given us everything: water, clean air, nourishment, shelter, medicines, happiness, meaning. And you are taking all this away, not just from us, but from everyone on the planet and from future generations. It is the early morning in the Amazon, just before first light, a time that is meant for us to share our dreams, our most potent thoughts. And so I say to all of you, the earth does not expect you to save her. She expects you to respect her. And we as indigenous peoples expect the same. To me, that's a perfect segue into my conversation with Judy Carman. Judy, thank you for joining us. Let me see. Let me get you on the screen. Okay, hold on a second. There you are. How are you?
I'm good. That letter was just amazing. Is that the woman there on the screen behind us that wrote the letter?
Yes.
Oh my.
Yeah, she's the woman who showing her hand that the oil is spilling. So I'll get her off now. So we
that was so profound and moving. My goodness. But yes,
Right.
that's. I think there's many of us who have been aware that we've lost our way a long time ago, and had a longing for the life that they are living in the Amazon, but didn't know what it was because we grew up in cities and places so divorced from that natural way of living. So it's wonderful to hear her articulate that so beautifully, and I hope that everyone in the world will read her letter. So that was in The Guardian this morning?
That was in The Guardian this morning, yes.
That's wonderful that they printed that.
Right.
So
it is the same kind of reverence that you talk about, the reverence for all life, the reverence for the earth, that she is showing to the forest, right?
Right. Yes, and she's also pointing out that this is a spiritual thing that we're dealing with here too, because we have lost our spiritual way is one thing she's kind of pointing out. And so many of the things that you and I've been talking about is reconnecting to nature, reconnecting to other species of the earth, because as long as we're not connected to them, then we can do, like she said, with impunity, with no guilt, with no sense that we're doing something wrong, just drilling and raping the earth and killing animals. And so it's, and destroying the rainforest, as she pointed out.
Right.
So yes, this is the Homo Ahimsa that we're talking about. Should we go back to talking about the definition of that first, maybe?
Yes.
For people who are just tuning in. So you and I both are talking about Homo Ahimsa. And the idea of that is that Homo sapiens has made a big mess. And so we can't, as using the same logic, the same mindset that Homo sapiens has used for all these many years, which is that of domination, not the woman in the Amazon. She has learned for centuries how to live in harmony. But for the most part, Homo sapiens has not done that well at all. And as I pointed out in my book, Homo Ahimsa, it wasn't alligators, it wasn't bears that did all the damage that we're seeing now. It was Homo sapiens. And so the idea is that you can't use the same logic, the same methods to fix things that you've used to do all the damage in the first place. So we need to seek out that ahimsa nature that lives within each one of us. And ahimsa means non-harm, literally, in Sanskrit. It has a much more beautiful, wider meaning because it also includes nonviolence and unconditional love and all of those things. And Gandhi, of course, took the vow of ahimsa years ago, and taught many of us about nonviolent, how to stand up for the truth nonviolently. So, but what I'm saying and what you're saying is that we all have that ahimsa nature in us already. It's a matter of awakening ourselves and letting that go free and letting Homo Ahimsa become the species that we have always meant to be.
Right.
And so, yeah, so, and that has profound implications when you think we've been living for, at least as far as we know, 10,000 years approximately, as this dominator species that is looking at all of nature and all animals as ours to use however we want with impunity. We are moving, as Homo Ahimsa, we are moving towards a partnership model of living in harmony with all of nature and all animals. And so this is the transition, and we're here, we're in it right now. And it's very exciting, as you have made very clear in so many different ways, Silas, with the up convergence thing that we did a couple of weeks ago, and now you're doing another thing. Is it the 31st of October?
Right. 31st of October and 1st of November.
And the 1st of November, where we'll be talking more about this. And it's there's a lot of talk about how awful everything is. We are creating something new out of all this chaos, and we can do that. And that's what's so exciting about the concept, I think, of Homo Ahimsa, and understanding that on a spiritual level, that's who we really are. And one of the things I talk about in my book is that the proof of that is that almost all religions, if not all, have some version of the golden rule as their highest ideal. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which is another way of saying ahimsa. You know, be loving to all. Do not hurt anyone. And so if that is the case, which it is, that is the ideal of all religions, and it is the ideal of all ethical traditions too. Even people who are not particularly religious or think of themselves as spiritual, they have ethics and morals and follow that ideal to a great extent. So if that's the case, isn't that proof that deep inside us we have that ahimsa nature? Otherwise, how would we have come up with that? Why wouldn't our highest ideal been, let's just destroy everything?
Right.
And that's what we've been doing, but that's against our true nature.
You know, that's beautiful, because what the story we are trying to create out of this is that, you know, we've been through 10,000 years of accumulating power for ourselves, you know, accumulating power in building technologies. And so we have done all that. And now it is, do we use that power to continue destroying the earth, or do we use that power to regenerate the earth and come into harmony with the earth? And so that's the beautiful transformation that you were talking about, you know, going from Homo sapiens, which is a very narcissistic term, right? You think about it. We call ourselves wise.
Right.
Homo sapiens. And
Yeah.
so going from describing our characteristic and boasting about our wisdom, instead just describing our character, right? Homo Ahimsa. It's just our character. This is who we are.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And we dreamed that up. Some scientists dreamed that up, Homo sapiens, that idea, during this whole episode, this 10,000 years of domination. So it made sense that he would name us sapiens. And yet, yeah, look what we've done. And as that woman in the letter pointed out so beautifully, our civilized sapiens has not been so sapiens, has not
Right.
been wise. And so, yeah, so here we are, and we're ready to make this transition. I think a lot of people are asking, well, how do we do it? And I think the first step is to recognize, accept, and embrace that it's already inside of us. It's a matter of letting go of a lot of old programs like you have to eat meat to be healthy. You can go to the circus and make fun of animals who are being tortured to entertain you. That's okay because you're human. All those things, all those programs, we have to let them fall away. And that's going to take a lot of inner work that we've all been doing. And everyone who's new to this, it's a very exciting work to be doing, but it's definitely a lot of inner work to let those things go. And I think one really good practice, especially right now, I've been doing this a lot myself because as we all know, all you have to do is get your emails or get online, and there are maybe 1 million different ideas of what's going on in this pandemic. And I think a good practice is to go, oh, I reacted to that. I say, no, that's not right. You know, if somebody says the earth is flat or the earth is round or whatever this pandemic is planned or whatever it might be, notice, how am I reacting to that? Well, and then go within and say, why did I react that way? What was I taught? What are my programmed thoughts that are making me have a knee-jerk reaction to that? And then work on finding the truth for yourself. And that truth is, if you follow love instead of money, you'll find the truth within yourself. So I think that's one good practice. But then what you are doing so beautifully is giving concrete steps, actual physical things that we can be doing with regard to the economy and feeding the hungry and all these wonderful things. And I think this is so revolutionary, because instead of complaining about how bad things are, you're coming up with all these solutions from the point of view of Homo Ahimsa rather than Homo Sapiens. And I love your butterfly analogy, that we're in a chrysalis right now where in butterflies, in caterpillars, I mean, the innards of them turns into imaginal cells, which I love that word. And that's kind of where we are right now. And we are going to come out of this as butterflies. But while we're here in all this chaos, this is our big chance to imagine this beautiful new world that we're creating.
Right. So it's about deploying what we have learned to be alongside, Nemonte, and helping her, with regenerating life and with maintaining life and respecting life, respecting the whole earth, So it's a beautiful transformation to be on.
It
And
is, yeah. Yeah,
um,
and it's wonderful to hear her words and know that we're partway there. We're with you. You know, we understand a little bit, not as much as she does. We want to learn
mhm.
and and come out of this chaos into the world that she knows. And of course, you know, if people are listening thinking, well, we can't all go to the rainforest and live, and that is true. But we can't, many of us can't live at this point in time with this many people on Earth as gatherers of food. There's going to have to be agriculture of plants to feed people, and there will continue to be, you know, various divisions of labor instead of everyone living in a tribal situation. We're kind of past that, don't you think, Silas? So we have to
Yeah,
come up with new ways. Yeah.
right.
So
We have
we
to come up with
can't.
new ways of organizing ourselves so that we can tap into each other's potentials. Because really, that's what the economy is, right? The economy is us saying, you know, I don't know how to do everything, but I'll do my part, and you do your part, and together we thrive better than if we were alone. That's what the economy is meant to be, right? It's supposed to be about organizing our activities in an efficient way. That's what economy really is, in an efficient way.
Mhm.
But right now, the economy is all about accumulating power to fewer and fewer people, accumulating resources to fewer and fewer people. And so the rest of us are basically extracting things and sending it up, you know, in a funnel. And you say, is this the only way to organize ourselves? So we're going to be talking about that next week with my guest. But, you know, wanted to focus with you on the new story of
Mhm.
Homo sapiens turning into Homo Ahimsa, because I heard that term, I read that term first in your book, you know, peace to all beings. When did you write that, by the way?
I think I wrote that early, like maybe 2002, I think is when it came
Okay.
out. Yeah, so it's
Okay.
been around a while. Yeah, and I had coined that term Homo Ahimsa then with that book, with this same thing that we're talking about. But then as things got more chaotic and more dire, I just thought, you know, I need to write another book and make it really to the point. We got to do this. We've got to open ourselves up to this, embrace this
Mhm.
true nature of ours, because that's what's going to stop all this destruction. By opening up to who we really are, we will be open to our intuition. We'll be able to visualize a new way of living. And really, it's so interesting that you started out with her letter, because they're living in kind of an Eden, or were, until, you
Mhm.
know, progress came and started destroying their way of life, but kind of a Garden of Eden existence that I
Mhm.
think we all long for. But we can't really, like I was saying earlier, go back to that way of living because of where we are now. As I don't know, I don't really like the word civilized, but everyone knows what I mean. So one thing I think that we're doing is we're visualizing what this world's going to look like, because it's never been created before.
Mhm.
We've got this collective memory of the way she's living now, that we can't all live that way now. So we have to visualize a new way of living. And you've done a really good job of that on your website, Silas, that talks about how we're living in normalized violence now. We're going to live in future very soon in normalized nonviolence. And But from that, we can visualize all kinds of beautiful aspects to that world where everyone's heart is nonviolent. Everyone has come to the understanding of who they really are. And so in my book, I've got a long list of things to just sit with the book and read one of them, and then just feel that and see it in your mind and taste what it would be like and smell what it would be like to, for example, look out at the ocean and see no trash and see the fish happy and swimming and free and no drift nets in the ocean, capturing all, I think it's about half of the animals that die are just thrown away as trash. And others are caught in the nets and die that way too. So visualize, see, I just did the opposite. I visualized how bad it is. So our practice is to visualize how beautiful that will be when there's no more drift nets. And there are wonderful people out there actually collecting drift nets that have been lost and putting them up on boats. Tons and tons of these. And this can happen as long as we stop putting them in the ocean in the first place, and the trash and all the other things. So that's just one little example. And another one would be to sit and contemplate how beautiful it would be if all the zoos let the animals that could survive in the wild go free, and their cages are just open. The doors are open. Then there's a few that can't be released to the wild. They wouldn't be able to survive. And so they live there, but in a sanctuary situation where there's not people walking all over and throwing things at them and taking their picture and making fun of them. There's people there taking care of them and loving them and honoring them and asking their forgiveness, really, for ever putting them in the cage and in the first place. And just to feel what that would feel like to see a zoo like that completely transformed into a beautiful sanctuary. So those are some of the ideas of using visualization. And I think it's important on a spiritual level to do that, because you're putting it into the energy field, and we're all doing that together. And so it's very lot of power going into that energy field on a spiritual level. But on a physical level, it also gives us a place to contemplate solutions. How can we do that? If the zoo is what we really want to focus on, how can we do that? How can we make that happen? And come up with actual physical ideas and solutions and put a team together. So and you're doing a lot of that.
Well, not me. I'm going to invite Abhiram Rosen from Sadhana Forest to come and talk about how he and their team is creating new forests around them. As opposed to, not all of us can go live in the Amazon, but we can literally create the Amazon around us. We can actually bring back the forest. We can bring back the animals, the wild animals that used to live there that have disappeared because we encroached upon their habitats. So it's about returning the habitats back to the animals and making that our primary role in our service right now to the earth. Because there's a lot of cleanup work to be done, a lot of regeneration work to be done to bring life back. And there are a lot of people who are actually doing it. And it's about supporting them and helping them, and expanding their efforts so that we can all come into harmony with Mimonte, at some point in time. And
right.
Yeah.
I love that. We're creating Amazon around us.
Right.
Yeah. That's That's wonderful. I love that. And that's another example of visualizing. And I think that we can all do that. I think it's a very powerful exercise. And I think Gandhi practiced that quite a bit, because he would go into contemplative times and fast often at the same time. And people would be waiting. Hey, wait, what are we supposed to be doing? And he's going, wait, till we know. And then when he comes up with a plan, then they go. So,
Right.
yeah. And so I love that. This is what we're doing for the animals that we have downtrodden for so many thousands of years and dominated and exploited and destroyed. And we're going to rebuild the earth for them, because it belongs to them too. And we can do it. And as we know and explain over and over, and to anyone who is not vegan, who's listening in, the animal agriculture industry is one of the biggest powers that we need to eliminate. And I'd say that, I say the word eliminate, but I don't mean be violent toward them. I mean just do without them. And when we do without them, then they no longer have anyone to buy their products, right? And so when they don't have anyone to buy their products, then they have to stop producing. That means no more animal agriculture. That means, that translates to so many things, so much water purification, because it's not being contaminated by animal waste, and all the pesticides, herbicides that goes into their feed, and as well as medicines that are being pumped into them to make them fatter and all of that. So animal agriculture is really the leading driver of a lot of this damage. And as she was saying in her letter that Silas read earlier, the woman in the Amazon, if you didn't come in at the first of this show, she was saying that the Amazon is on fire, and it's because of animal agriculture that's happening. So we eliminate that very easily by simply not buying their products anymore. And their products are living beings that want to live, that want to be with their families and and their friends and live free. And yet we're taking their lives away, and also overpopulating the earth with farmed animals where wild animals once roamed and lived, and in natural, normal, happy lives the way they were meant to. So it destroys their lives as well as the farmed animals' lives. So, and Silas, you have a wonderful chart that shows how we used to be just a little dot, and the wild animals and the fauna were, flora and fauna were, big dots. And now the big dots are the farmed animals and us, and the wild animals are this little tiny speck. And that's immoral. We had no right to do that. And we really, really lost our way in inventing the domination of nature and animals.
Right. But I actually tell a slightly different story, that the animals were actually co-creating the thermostat for the planet, and with us. We were heating up the earth to make sure that the earth never goes back to another ice age ever again. And now that we have successfully achieved that, the earth will never go back to another ice age as long as we are around. It's up to us to now, thank the animals for their help, because they actually sacrifice their bodies for this, and they were
Are you
oppressed.
talking about farmed animals?
Farmed animals also, because they were heating up the earth too, along with us.
Mm-hmm.
And now they are the, we know from science that by getting rid of animal agriculture, you can literally start cooling the earth again, and literally start
Right.
bringing the earth back to its thermostat setting, and then handing the reins over to our children and grandchildren and say, keep it there. That's your job. That's because the earth never has anything that's waste. At least in nature, I've never seen anything that's considered a waste. And when we label something as waste, we really haven't understood it. So when we understand it, eventually we'll see, oh wow, that's what we were doing. And so that's the story I'm trying to tell, at least from
Yeah.
a scientific perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And as you were mentioning, our children and grandchildren, that makes what we're talking about all the more important and urgent, because I know you have a grandchild and I have grandchildren, and we can't leave it like this. We've got to do everything we can right now in order for them to have a world that they can survive and thrive in, and in order for them to understand where Homo sapiens went wrong and to not ever repeat those mistakes again. And we've got to, we're just at this choice point in the history of humanity that is, I mean, this is a huge revolutionary turning point for us. And as you've pointed out, it could go very badly if we don't take steps now. But the thing that's so beautiful is that the steps are not that difficult to make. We need to be very creative. We need to be very intuitive, and we need to think of new things that, as we were saying, new ways of living by, keeping the good things and letting go of, like you said, the waste and the trash and the damage and all of that. But we need to do that now for our children and grandchildren, so that they will actually have a place in which to thrive, and a new sense of what human beings are. Why are we here? What are we doing? Are we blessing the earth, or are we destroying the earth? And we can't keep destroying it.
Right. It's really about telling a story in which our children can forgive us for what has happened and say, actually, they did something that's good for us too, right? That's the kind of story we need to tell. Otherwise, I mean, I don't want to leave this earth, being cursed by my children. Oh, my grandchildren, especially my granddaughter.
Yes.
I made a promise to her, as you know. And
I know, yes. Yeah. Tell everyone about the promise.
Well, the promise is that the world is going to be vegan by 2026, because she does not want to see her relatives, the animals, being hurt. Because when the animals are hurt, she's hurt. And she's very clear about that. She feels it in every bone of her body, in every cell of her body. So, and so this is why, I find it, I wake up every morning energized, because I want to fulfill my promise. I want to do everything in my power to fulfill my promise. And to me, as you said, this is an engineering project. It's about, how do we get food to people? How do we get shelter to people? How do we get clothing to people? The basic necessities that people can need, and make sure that everyone is gets what they need in an efficient way, right? How do we do that? And to me, that's like, we are on spaceship Earth, and we have to figure out how to deal with every fellow cosmonaut on spaceship Earth. Right.
Yeah. And there's many people that don't have the time to watch this video, read our books, and study all this and decide what they're going to do. They're living hand to mouth. They're barely able to feed their kids, especially now when so many people have lost their jobs. And so we have an obligation to them too,
Absolutely.
to have, because we have this vision and we have the blessing of being able to see this and kind of forge a path ahead. So yes, and yes, I want to also, like you, Silas, be able to tell my kids I did my best to leave you with a beautiful place to thrive and be joyful and not be dominated, because we're being dominated as well by the systems that have been put in place with this domination mindset that's been around for so many thousands of years. One thing that I researched for my book was a book called Beyond War, and I thought it was so interesting. It was a compilation of anthropological research about people who lived in indigenous people who lived in tribal ways, had no war, no pandemics, and no animal agriculture. It was as if those three things went together to bring us where we are now. But that those people, and we don't have a lot of written history because they didn't write. We have very little to go by, but what he has surmised from the research of those tribes from long ago, before animal agriculture, and from a few living indigenous tribes, was that there was no war and no animal agriculture and no pandemics. So that's all pretty new. That was a time of egalitarianism and partnership, and definitely partnership with the natural world. Just like she was saying, they have learned that Amazon has taught them how to live, and they have listened. And we need to go back to that, where, like you said, we create the Amazon around us and then we listen to it and understand what it is, how to go forward, and search in our own hearts as well. So yeah, there's a great deal to do, but it's all very creative work and very exciting work. And I think it's so important for everybody to feel empowered and optimistic that we can do this, even though the news is depressing. This is what's real. This is what we're doing. This is what we are headed toward. So let's do it together. And let's believe in ourselves that we can actually do this. We're not just going to go down in flames.
You know, there is evidence that every civilization has gone through something like this, right? Like the Indus Valley civilization, they destroyed the environment around them, and then they moved into they migrated into the subcontinent of India, and then they figured out how to live in harmony with nature, and they did that for thousands of years, right, before colonization happened. So every civilization has gone through this. Even the Native Americans who came here first, like 14,000 years ago, there's evidence that they killed all the megafauna, the big animals that were here.
Right.
And then they figured out, oh, now, we have to do the work that the animals were doing, which is grazing large amounts of land together and, and preventing fires from happening. So those things they were now doing by setting fires, controlled fires, and behaving as if a wild herd had come and grazed it all, right? So they had to then figure out how to live in harmony with nature. So we went through a phase of destruction and then creation, recreation again. Everyone has done this. So now it's up to the Western civilization, which is dominating the whole planet and it's colonized the whole planet, to go through the same transformation, okay, that every other civilization has done before, to deploy the technologies that we have created for the good of the earth, which and then not doing it for individual profits, but for the good of the whole. So it's reimagining our optimization criteria, and then figuring out how to clean up our technologies, because some of them are really dirty. They are no good, and there are better ways to do those things. But we didn't bother with that because we were only looking for the lowest cost, and the lowest cost and the highest value, right? I mean, we have created this money system that's making us do stupid things. But it's a game, and it's a game, and we can change that game.
We can, yes, and that's what we have to do. And like you were saying in another call about the UN, one of the goals was economic growth,
Right?
And you were saying we need to replace that, eliminate that, and replace it with no more exploitation of animals.
Correct.
And I think that's so brilliant but it's a difficult concept, I think, because we're all used to economic growth being the goal, so that we can make more money and we can have a bigger house and a better car and all that stuff. And of course, for the super wealthy, it means, manipulating the stock market and all these things. And so our economy, which you can speak to much better than I can, but is based on growth. If you invest in a company, you want that company to grow, so your money will grow. And that is one of the things that is destroying the earth, because all these companies are pushing themselves to get more money coming in, make more products, sell more stuff, get more people manipulated into buying their stuff. And that whole system has got to be reimagined, as you have said. And so that's, there's many, many moving parts here, but that's a big one. That's a really big one. How do we live without the concept that our economy has to constantly be growing? And I think that's one of the maybe the biggest challenges after eliminating animal agriculture. And I wanted to mention that as we're visualizing a planetary home with no animal agriculture, where there are no slaughterhouses, zero. Animals are not being killed to be eaten, so that all the damage that's been done by them is over. This has the automatic benefit of increasing people's health, human beings, Homo Ahimsa's health. And so we all become much healthier. So the pharmaceutical giant that we know is running a lot of the news and a lot of other things in our lives is also going to be much less needed, if at all, because as we learn from our new rainforest that we surround ourselves with, we will come to a place where we will not need pharmaceuticals. We will have plants and we'll have the wisdom that we gain from the forest around us and the land around us. And so all these things I'm saying are things for us to visualize, and for people who have skills in those areas to go, okay, that's something I really want to tackle, and find some other people to work on it with. But the economy is a big one, and I know you're working on that, Silas, and that's very challenging, because that's one, like I was saying, the programs that we are all programmed with, that's a big one. Let that fall away. I have to make more and more and more money. I have to get more and more and more stuff. Let that all fall away and ask, do I really?
Yeah, see, that begins with assuming that you don't belong. That's when you accumulate, because you think you don't belong, right? But that's the game we are playing, because in the game, we start by telling people you don't belong. You get 0 to start with. Unless you do something that someone with money wants you to do, you are a 0, right? So
Yeah.
we tell people that everyone has an inalienable right to life, and then we tell them you all have to go earn a living, right? So these are also lies that we tell them when we say them that they have an inalienable right to life. That's a lie that we told them. That's not true in our system. So we have to now create a system in which that is actually the truth, that we do belong exactly as we are. And so we have to tell that story and that new game. We have to create that game. In fact, I'm going to be talking about that next week with Sid Stalecker. So, and I'll announce that soon. I want to also share something that Joanne MacArthur, she took a picture of me back in, I don't know, I think it was last year, maybe a year before that. So I don't know. Do you see this?
Yes, I see it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because
wow.
this is what we really need from, only thing we need from animals is forgiveness. They have done their job, right? So I say they have done their job, and we don't need to make any more demands of them. We don't need their bodies. We don't need their secretions. We don't need their skin. We don't need any of that anymore as human beings. And we can thank them for the work that they have done, for helping the planet to never have to go back to another ice age again. Right? They co-created it with us without even knowing that's what they were doing. We actually co-created it without even knowing that's what we were doing. And
That's for
now
sure.
Mother
Yep.
Nature is waking us up and saying, you're done with that caterpillar phase. You need to wake up and become butterflies,
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
thank you so much for helping us on this path. And thank you so much for telling the right stories and being who you are, Judy.
Oh, I thought you were saying that to the animals. Just saying that. Yes,
For
and
both, yeah.
same to the animals.
Same to the animals, yes.
Yes. Oh, well, thank you for having me on this show, Silas. I've really enjoyed just visiting with you, and I hope people have benefited from it and go away from this with a feeling of hope and faith that we're going to do this.
Right.
We're going to create this world that we've all been longing for all our lives.
Right. Yeah. Vegani Saturn is saying, can we wish vegan world earlier than 2026, like 2021? Actually, my granddaughter, for her, 2026 was like the outside limit.
Right.
Yeah, the sooner the better, yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, next month.
Right. I mean, it's like, when John F. Kennedy said, let's go to the moon by the end of this decade. That was just a goal, right? That then we met it by 1969. So a year ahead of schedule. It's the same thing. So this, to me, meeting these sustainable development goals is an engineering project. And once we drop that goal number 8, which to me is the Trojan horse, this economic growth Trojan horse, and
Right.
once we recognize it for what it is and throw it away and include zero animal exploitation, it just makes all the other goals easier to meet.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
So
Yeah.
from an engineering perspective, it makes it a highly achievable set of targets, a set of goals. And
Well,
then we
and I
can
think
say, okay, yeah, which one do we want to address first? Which one do we want to address next? So we can carve it out and figure out how to really get there. Okay, and be serious about this. Because so far, all these nations that signed the Sustainable Development Goals, they're just doing goal number 8, economic
right.
growth.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we'll get to those others later.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the great gifts that you've given to us Silesh, is this engineering perspective that we need to break this into doable, achievable goals, and also setting the date. I think that was really important because I know it built a fire under me, and I think all of us who've been in the vegan movement for so long it's out there. It's just, out there somewhere. We're going to do it. It's just going to take time. But you set the date. And so now we're empowered in a whole new way. And I really appreciate that very much.
Yeah, I have to tell you, it wasn't me who set the date. It was Kimaya, my granddaughter. She
came up with 2026?
No, she insisted that I tell her when I'm going to do my job.
Okay.
So I had to come up with a date right away, because she was demanding a date by the time I'm going to do my job.
Okay, well, Kamaya, thank you for giving us a goal.
Yeah.
An achievable goal, yes, and it is. It is
an achievable goal, very much so, because it's about saying, oh, yeah, I mean, can we not do this? Even those who say, oh, I'm used to eating this way, or I'm used to doing this because that's my culture, that's my tradition. I tell them here, if you really want that, here is something that tastes just like that.
Oh, yeah.
We have so much of those, right? So much technology that's available now. If you really want to eat that way, you can do it if you really want to. And then they go around pretending, oh, it doesn't quite taste like So that's where I think we get into, do we eat to live or do we live to eat?
Yeah, that's so important. Yeah. To think. And that's another program that we've been programmed. Oh, French cuisine is so, sophisticated and all this. No, it actually, that cuisine can kill you a lot earlier than some others because of all the oil and everything. But yeah, that's another program. And that's a really powerful program that we have to think when somebody says, oh, come on, you've got to have the turkey, it's Thanksgiving. What is your gut telling you? That was a living being. Do you really want to do that? And then your gut is going to say, but they won't like me if I don't eat it. And all those things. So those are all programs to just shed, just let them go. That's part of the old culture. And we have to create a new one now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if we want to stick to our culture, we know exactly where we are going. And it's not a good place.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's really that's it in a nutshell. Look where we went. We don't want to go there anymore.
Right.
We can do it.
Thank you so much, Judy. This has been inspiring, and it's a great setup for the talks that are going to come, the shows that are going to come from now on. I'm looking at this as a series, building us up to a vegan world and addressing concrete issues that we're going to find along the way as we get to a vegan world. So I'm so grateful to Jane for giving us this forum so we can talk about this and get input from the audience, and it's awesome. Yeah. So thank you, Jane, and thank you everybody for being here. Until next week. So see you next week, and next week we'll be talking about the economy and Aquarius. Okay, so talk to you then.
I'll be listening in. Thank you, Silesh, so much. Thank you, Jane. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.